like a year ago, I was trying to figure out whether I was going to move to this neighborhood. Basically, it's kind of a rough neighborhood. You have a lot of like nice storefronts and things on the main streets, but on the sides there's a lot of crime that takes place. A lot of kids who are on the streets because their parents aren't around. I basically moved down there to do some missional living, but not in a way that we're trying to save the city. We feel like there's an urgency there, but the urgency plays out of our lives, not just a few days or weeks or years. Basically, being in Northside looks like us living life with people, just being available so that the kids can knock on the door and we can drop whatever we're doing and spend time playing video games with them. Playing basketball's a good situation as well. I think the best times with one of the boys I've gotten to hang out with, Maurice, and he usually talks like big and bad, like he's about to like totally own me in basketball, but I mean that's fine. And then we'll shoot free throws, and then we get to get in conversations that we wouldn't have gotten in if we hadn't just been playing basketball. And you know, part of me sometimes wants to just always say more, but the fact is I'm moving at Maurice's speed, not mine.
Sometimes I think differences can be intimidating. It's easy to think sometimes if a person is quite different from me, what do I have to offer just from the standpoint we don't have common ground? It's getting close and rubbing shoulders with folks who are different from us that quickly dismantle those barriers, those perceptual barriers and those fears that we have. I'm finding, again, the longer I do this, the more there are common human experiences that everyone shares. You know, we're all trying to survive. We all want security and, you know, safe love. We want to be in committed relationships with people who accept us. I think we all have the need for significance, you know, for meaning and purpose in our lives. And I think we have a need for the thrill of really being alive. Some of the challenge is just getting past the superficial differences to realize, man, we're the same. The trappings are all different, the piercings are all, you know, or whatever. But you know what? The same stuff, the same dynamics are playing out from the inside.
I'm sitting here with Kristen and Chris. John, thank you so much. What do you do when you meet someone who has, who says something, or you pick up something from them that you know is totally against what some of your value system is all about? What do you do with that?
Yeah, that's one where, I mean, you gotta kind of walk into that situation expecting that. I mean, that shouldn't surprise me. If a sinner acts really sinful, you know, of course, they're not sounding redeemed today. And so I need to expect that and not be thrown by it. That's the way the rest of the world operates. And so I'm just trying to, at that point, trying to have a point of connection. Again, we found ourselves 3 feet from one another somehow, and what is it that we can talk about?
And it's not about dropping your value system, the things that you deeply believe or the things that you think are biblical, but it's a matter of realizing there's some tension there in loving people who don't understand those values, or are just not at that place, or at a place where they're rejecting them for all sorts of different reasons because of pain and so forth. What do you think makes you the kind of people you are that says, I could do this?
Time with the Lord, especially. The time you spend with God, the more time you spend with your Father, the more you start to see the way He sees things. So when you see people, you don't see people I don't know, or people who are just different from me. You see people who the Father knows, and people who God has a plan for. And you may not know exactly how that plan's going to work or how to even get to that point, but you know He knows. And if you stick along with Him and what's going on, He's going to tell you what to do.
You feel like God has already been dealing with these people, is that correct?
Oh yeah, it's a gift. I mean, that's the greatest thing, is to lay down the burden that you think you need to change people. Lay it down. That's a heavy load to bear, and Christ said that, you know, His yoke is light. His, you know, that burden is easy because He's got the change taken care of.
One of the students that I shared with last quarter was a young lady who's very, very bright and extremely feisty. She had had religious upbringing that she had rejected, you know, all out. And so we had, you know, I invited her, hey, let's get a cup of coffee and chat. And as she was sharing her story, I found myself throughout empathizing with her, including in those experiences she had with religious people where she was alienated, where she felt looked down upon, where she felt she was despised, where she felt misunderstood, where she felt dismissed. And honestly, I know what those things feel like. And so it was easy to identify, oh yeah, and just to say, I am so sorry. At the end of her conversation, she said, Evan, if there were more people like you who were able to talk with me the way you do, there'd be a lot more people in the church, I think.
Why do you think his student responded so well to him?
Instead of finding difference, he found definitely some commonality that was there, and he listened, he took time. And I think for most people that's something that can be very unexpected from people in general. So like it's very surprising at times.
What does the empathy mean? When you hear that, what does that mean to you, empathy?
I think it means I can get into your shoes and identify with the experience that you had. That instead of looking from my lens, my viewpoint, I'll put that aside and I'll look from yours and allow myself to experience what that maybe felt like.
It's easy to feel I'm the only one who feels like this.
Absolutely.
And so when someone listens and they spend time and they're there, that's the key. They're there. They're listening. They are accepting you, and they're not just accepting you today. They're going to accept you tomorrow and the day after. And when we're able to do that every day, or every day we meet with this person, to be able to put time there, it speaks volumes.
2 weeks later, she came to me at the end of my class and said, listen, Evan, I'm considering applying at the Hustler store. Would you be willing to be a recommendation for me? Now that's to make a short story long, I'm getting at this question of how do we deal with the tension between acceptance and endorsement? So there I'm standing in front of my class. After class, she's asked me, Evan, would you be willing to be a recommendation for me for the Hustler store? She said, I'm perverted, I'm into that kind of stuff. And just a little bit that she told me about her lifestyle, I didn't find that hard to believe, believe. So I said to her, you know what, buddy, if they call me, I will sing your praises. And I found myself in a quandary in that moment. It's like, well, what do I choose to do? But my mindset, I think, when I'm in those scenarios with my students who are all over the landscape, in terms of where they're at spiritually, morally, in terms of their worldview, their values, etc., is to think, how can I take this person where they are right now and help them take the next step toward Jesus? What does that look like? And I'm praying like a banshee while I'm doing that. Oh God, oh God, oh God, what are you doing here? What do you want me to do? And that's fuzzy sometimes. But in that moment, as I'm praying, as I'm standing there responding, it's like, Lord, I think this young woman needs to see that there are people of faith who can take her right where she is and say, oh, I'll walk this journey with you.
In this session, we talked about finding commonality and empathizing with people who aren't like you. We discussed the challenging line between acceptance and endorsement. As God's love overflows through our lives, we will naturally begin to see outflow toward people who aren't like us. In the final session, we'll take a look at the ways that God's love can flow out into the world through us.